It's going to be nice, though. I think getting out of the spotlight and just getting to live my life and do things that I want to do, and not have to sit and I love talking to all of you, but it's going to be nice to not have to sit in front of a microphone, multiple times a week. I really appreciate all of you, but it will be nice to kind of get away and relax for a little bit.
Consider how content Caitlin Clark is now that she is free of the toxic culture, while the WNBA is nearly inconsolable over her confirmed multi-million-dollar contract in Europe.
I keep getting notification in people commenting under my shorts videos that Caitlin Clark's gone. She's left the WNBA. What is going on? I don't believe that.
The league is in such a state of disarray as a result of what was merely a rumor turning into hard, true reality that Christy Sides of the Indiana Fever was fired. It's highly likely that Christy Sides' tenure as the Indiana Fever's coach is drawing to an end. It appears as though they are attempting to shut it down entirely. There is actual pandemonium and everything appears to be out of context. There's simply no need for Caitlin to stay around, especially now that everything is falling apart. However, what specifics are included in her new European contract? What is going to happen to her WNBA tied Nike contract, and how will the whole legal process unfold? Let's dissect everything. A huge number of players have already left to play in other countries during the offseason. Does she have the physical makeup to be a WNBA player? Thus, it was evident from the start that the WNBA should focus only on Caitlin Clark and construct their future around her. However, they've managed to botch the situation so horribly that Clark is now leaving for Europe, and they're in full panic mode, fearing they may lose the league's cash cow. She simply isn't built for this league's brutality. Yes, she isn't moving fast enough to avoid the physical contact. If you're wondering why, let's speak about Caitlin's incredible debut season, which is truly remarkable. She was captivating, not simply talented. Her three-pointer appeared to be coming from a different time zone. She had an absurd court vision, and her admirers were lining up in large numbers to fill the arenas. People are paying attention. I promise not to lie to you now. Since Caitlin Clark was fired, I have not paid attention for a single second, but that is not out of the ordinary for me. TV figures that smash records. It was the whole Caitlin Clark effect. Whether or not the WNBA was prepared for it, she brought them into the spotlight and provided them the much-needed attention that they deserved. Not only was she a rookie, but she was the rookie who had the potential to take the league to new heights. What actions did they take? Nothing at all to satisfy her. Indeed, she will also be carrying a target on her back. But behind the scenes, the story was quite different. Indeed, Clark was increasing the WNBA's viewership, but rather than receiving the star treatment she deserved, she was essentially being physically assaulted on the court each night. The league veterans and flagrant fouls were falling on her like confetti. They were enjoying some popcorn while they sat there and observed everything. It's as if they didn't see their golden goose until oops, she left. She has been the center of attention, the box office draw, and the subject of numerous narratives. Most recently, Sheryl Swoop was involved in the whole affair, even though Sheryl Swoop and all of this weren't actually about her. And she had something to take care of every time you turned around. Caitlin can take it no longer. She's packing her bags and flying to Europe, where she'll undoubtedly be treated like a queen of basketball. In the meantime, the WNBA is frantically trying to figure out how in the world to maintain fan interest while acting like a chicken without a head. ESPN query mark. Well, they're having a little tantrum of their own, attempting to act as though they have any influence. Let me warn you, they don't. It required a few technical infractions. She was not very good at physical defense. She recently expressed her dissatisfaction with the league's officiating at the professional level, telling TV media, "I feel like I'm getting hammered and everybody is physical with me." Additionally, opponents get away with things that others are not able to. Caitlin Clark stated as much. Clark is fed up with the WNBA's belief that they can capitalize on her talent without providing her with real assistance, as well as the disrespect and lack of protection she has experienced. It's really beneficial for her that she is asserting her power. Remembering what she went through while in the league is important. This was no ordinary roughing up by a newbie. This level of cruelty was unmatched. It felt like players were going after her in every game, fouling her as though it were a contact sport. The referees are just worthless. There were moments when it appeared as though Clark was being tackled, and the referees did nothing but stand there in shock. Proceed with your play. It makes sense why she began criticizing them in interviews, stating that she felt like she was being unfairly treated there and that her claims weren't overblown. For example, I constantly receiving notifications from folks that Caitlin Clark has left my short films, the WNBA has lost her. What is happening? Like, I find it to be untrue. Rather than intervening to safeguard their most talented player, the WNBA allowed rival players' envy to run wild. Clark was not being mentored by veterans. They were actually firing shots at her. The topic of basketball had changed. It was intimate. The league did nothing but watch and fidget. They are currently bearing the cost. After serving as their punching bag for too long, Caitlin Clark is taking her talents to Europe, where, let's face it, they'll probably throw a red carpet party for her. But it's not just Clark playing abroad that matters here. She needs to demand the deference she is due. With every chance, the WNBA tried to position her as the face of women's basketball and center their whole brand around her. Rather, they disregarded her worth and allowed her get beaten up on the court. As a result, she is no longer there. They're currently in disarray, attempting to find out how to maintain viewership without their biggest star. Hey man, there's always something attacking your lunch ticket. The entire season has included shady plays. Not only is ESPN freaking out, but guess what? All those viewers they expected to increase their viewership vanished. In that very moment, the league is left wondering what went wrong and scratching its head. However, the reality is straightforward. They are currently paying the price for their lack of regard for Caitlin Clark. It's not merely a victory for her that Clark moved to Europe. It serves as a reminder to ESPN and the WNBA. They were inconsiderate to her. As the player who was supposed to shape their future walks away, leaving them in the dust, all they can do now is act out in a tantrum. You guys are the actual races, even though those men think they are. The people who are finding reasons to despise Caitlin Clark and her growing fan base. When Caitlin Clark made her WNBA debut, ESPN was living the dream, and who could blame them? It was evident as soon as she set foot on that court. This was no ordinary rookie. This changed the entire game. ESPN recognized potential newsworthy stories, a wave of new followers eager to follow Caitlin Clark, and financial signs. They therefore put everything on the line, painting her as the upcoming star of women's hoops. Furthermore, what do you know? It was successful. Clark's video games became immediate hits. ESPN rode the meteoric rise in viewership as if it were the only show in town. They were savoring every moment of it, and she was their golden ticket. During the second half of the game, Dejanay Carrington assaulted the WNBA's Michael Jordan, stabbing her in the eye with her fingernails. As a result, she sustained a black eye. Play the 11th side? I think that's called. Could this just be looped? I'm not making this up. However, we must not overlook Chennedy Carter's small-scale prank. This one is a classic since there was no meaningful penalty meted out, not even an ejection when she poked Clark in the eye, nearly rendering her blind for the Hoosier playoff game. It appeared as though the WNBA was having a casual Tuesday when they took out the league's most talented player. The takeaway, nobody is intervening to stop Caitlin Clark, so it's open season. Then all of a sudden, your hand is pointing downward and directly into the biggest WNBA star's eye. The behavior is not instinctive. And as I was watching the game yesterday, I shouted it out in real time, but it was deliberate. That was no coincidence. Furthermore, this was not an isolated instance. During her debut season, Clark was called for flagrant fouls 177% of the time. Give that a moment to settle in. Not only was she singled out more than everybody else, she was almost like a magnet for low-quality photos. 80% of those fouls, too, indeed, they were all from the Chicago Sky. A few weeks ago, a statistic was also released which stated that Caitlin Clark was called for 17% of the WNBA's flagrant fouls this season. And the Chicago Sky was responsible for 80% of the egregious fouls against Caitlin Clark. Now, the one we're looking at here, which in my opinion ought to have been a flagrant foul, wasn't called as such. Thus, there have been plays that haven't even been deemed egregious fouls, as well as hard fouls and cheap shots. Carter had only just begun with his shoulder check. It was taken a step further by players like Diamond DeShields, who in a game where the score wasn't even close, ran her over out of fury. Game after game, ESPN said nothing as Clark continued to get slammed down. Simply going about business as normal, milking Clark's popularity while she was out there getting hammered without criticizing the league or advocating for more protection. Allow her to prepare. Please quit being so petty. Give up being naughty, for she is like a blade with two edges. She's chopping tail in both directions. I can see it bobbing you guys. Even worse were the dynamics in the changing rooms. On the floor, Clark had to deal with more than just fouls and physical aggressiveness. She had to deal with a poisonous environment that existed within the league. Veterans perceived her as a recent arrival undeserving of the attention she was receiving, and they made every effort to force her out rather than helping her. This was not a place where a star could survive and grow. Instead of being seen as someone who could improve the league as a whole, Clark had started to be seen more as a liability and a challenge to the existing quo. Your main attraction, your lifeblood, the reason you matter, was just beaten and stabbed and got away with it. It's astounding that the WNBA didn't realize how valuable Clark was until it was too late. They were dealing with a player that was not only more talented than legendary players like Diana Taurasi and Sue Bird, but also more impactful.
Even while Taurasi and Bird are well-known figures in the game, neither of them brought in as much money as Clark did during her first campaign. Even still, the WNBA did not take sufficient precautions to keep her safe.
They gave her permission to leave. They now have to handle the consequences. You want to fucking kill rookies every time you play them. The Indiana Fever fan base has never made racist remarks to me. Sincerely, it's unacceptable. We have conducted ourselves in a professional manner the entire time. With Clark's departure, ESPN is in complete disarray. Watching their ratings plummet without the one player who was bringing in all the fans has left them scrambling. WNBA games featuring Clark attracted around 2 million people prior to her announcement of her leaving, with the remaining teams barely managing 400,000 viewers. It's more than just a dip. It's a steep drop. ESPN is aware of this. Without Clark, they're frantically trying to figure out how to keep people watching, but they're at a loss for ideas. Even worse, ESPN is aware that they could have taken further action. They had the opportunity to use their enormous platform to criticize the WNBA for allowing its brightest star to be physically assaulted on a nightly basis. They may have asked for harsher sanctions for the players pursuing Clark and improved officiating, but no, they took no action. They took a back seat, ramped up the tension, and continued to count down the watchers. They're left to pick up the pieces now, wishing they had taken action when they had the opportunity. Who you are and how inexperienced you are irrelevant. Because we're here to demonstrate that this is a mature women's league and that it is the greatest league in the world for a reason. Veterans are coming for your throat. Thus, it makes no difference who you are. When I reflect on the past 20 years, I realize that I am partly to blame for the fact that women's basketball is being watched. And I want everyone to understand that. For Caitlin Clark, was the WNBA's golden goose the player who had the ability to lead the organization into unprecedented success. Rather, the league permitted her to be pushed out due to internal politics, petty rivalries, and foul play. And the truth is evident now as they try to figure out what went wrong. They will pay the price for a very long time because they let their best player to leave without a fight.